There's a pattern in history that has ended every great empire for the past 500 years. It is not superstition. It is not politics. It is mathematics. Each time a nation rises to global dominance, it controls trade, currency, and military power, and then it begins a sequence of self-destruction that looks different on the surface, but identical underneath. Spain followed it. Britain followed it. The Soviet Union followed it. And now, in 2025, the United States is walking that same path, step by step, policy by policy, believing it is immune to the laws of decline. But the pattern doesn't care about belief. It only cares about behavior. And according to that pattern, America has already completed 5 of the 7 stages that always end in collapse. What imperial collapse really looks like. When people imagine the fall of an empire, they picture invasion, rebellion, or war. But collapse rarely begins on a battlefield. It begins quietly, with economic exhaustion. The empire stretches itself too thin. Too many bases, too many obligations, too many debts, until the foundations beneath its power start to rot. At first, nothing seems wrong. The money still works. The military still wins. The politicians still make promises. Life goes on. But the cracks deepen beneath the surface. Production slows. Innovation dies. The debt grows faster than the wealth. The empire spends more time maintaining power than creating value. And then, almost overnight, everything changes. Allies hedge their bets. Enemies become bolder. Trade partners look elsewhere. The world's reserve currency, once the empire's ultimate advantage, starts to lose its magic. What once made the empire powerful becomes the source of its fragility. This is how it happened 3 times before. 3 superpowers, 3 complete collapses, all following the exact same 7-stage pattern. Spain in the 1600s, Britain in the 1900s, the Soviet Union in the late 20th century. Each one convinced that history's rules didn't apply to them. Each one learned they were wrong. Spain, the Empire of Silver. In 1590, Spain was the richest empire on earth. It controlled half the world's gold and silver. Its ships sailed from Manila to Mexico, from Peru to Portugal. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. Spanish soldiers dominated Europe. Spanish kings ruled across 4 continents. On paper, they were untouchable. And that's exactly when the pattern began. Stage 1. Military overextension. King Philip II ruled from 1556 to 1598, an era of ceaseless war. Spain fought the Ottomans in the Mediterranean, the French in Italy, the Protestants in the Netherlands, and the English on the seas. It conquered the Americas and defended them from pirates, rebels, and rival empires. By 1580, Spanish forces were fighting on 4 continents simultaneously. Half of all government revenue went to the military, and it still wasn't enough. They had built a global empire too vast to sustain. Stage 2. Currency debasement. To pay for endless wars, Spain turned to alchemy, not with gold, but with deception. The crown began mixing copper into its silver coins. What was once pure currency became watered-down money. Merchants noticed. Prices rose. Inflation soared. By 1600, Spanish coins contained more copper than silver, and no one trusted them. The empire that controlled the world's minds had accidentally destroyed its own money. Stage 3. The debt spiral. Spain borrowed from every banker in Europe, Italian merchants, German houses, anyone with gold to lend. Within 20 years, Spain defaulted 4 times, in 1557, 1560, 1575, and 1596. Each bankruptcy was followed by promises of reform that never came. Each time, the crown borrowed again, certain that the next shipment of silver would solve everything. But the silver only bought time, and time was running out. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. With easy money flowing in from the Americas, Spain forgot how to produce. Why farm when you can import food with silver? Why build when you can buy? Nobles considered labor beneath them. Manufacturing collapsed. Agriculture stagnated. The empire became a consumer society, rich in appearance, hollow in substance. Every year, Spanish silver flowed out to pay for Dutch goods, French wine, and Italian silk. Wealth passed through Spain. But it didn't stay there. Stage 5. Social decay. As the economy withered, so did society. Beggars filled the streets of Madrid. Crime exploded. Intellectuals fled to more dynamic countries. France, England, the Netherlands. The empire of conquistadors became a land of bureaucrats, priests, and soldiers. By 1700, Spain was no longer a power. It was a memory, a nation still draped in royal robes, but empty inside. The first global empire had fallen, undone by the same seven-stage sequence that would later repeat across centuries. Britain, the sun that finally set. 300 years later, Britain inherited the mantle of global supremacy. At its height, the British Empire controlled 1/4 of the world's population and land. The pound sterling was the international reserve currency. London was the world's financial capital. The Royal Navy ruled every sea. And just like Spain, Britain believed it was permanent. Stage 1. Military overextension. By 1900, Britain was defending colonies from Africa to Asia. When World War I erupted, Britain faced a choice: remain neutral and preserve its empire, or fight and risk everything. It chose to fight. The war cost $40 billion, equivalent to $1 trillion today. And Britain borrowed heavily from the United States to finance it. By 1918, the empire had won the war, but lost its balance sheet. The creditor had become the debtor. Stage 2. Currency debasement. To maintain confidence in the pound, Britain returned to the gold standard in 1925 at its pre-war rate. But the pound was overvalued, its economy too weak to support it. British exports became uncompetitive, unemployment soared, and the government drained its reserves trying to defend an illusion. In 1931, they gave up. The pound lost 1/4 of its value overnight. The world's reserve currency had just defaulted on credibility. Stage 3. The debt spiral. Britain never recovered from its First World War debts, and then came the second. Another $120 billion. More borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed more than its entire GDP. The empire was victorious but bankrupt. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1947, Britain relinquished India, the crown jewel of its dominion. Within 20 years, nearly every colony followed. Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, gone. The map that once glowed red with British territory faded to grey. Stage 5. Currency collapse. From $4 to the pound in 1940 to barely $2.30 by 1980. Inflation gutted savings. The reserve currency of the world was now a regional coin. Britain still possessed nuclear weapons and a permanent UN seat, but everyone knew the truth. The empire was dead. The pound sterling had become a museum piece. The Soviet Union. Collapse without war. After 1945, the Soviet Union emerged as the other global superpower. It had nuclear weapons, satellites, and influence across half the globe. For decades, it competed with America in everything. weapons, space, ideology. But beneath the surface, it was rotting from within. Stage 1. Military overextension. The USSR spent nearly 20% of its GDP on the military, triple what the United States spent. It propped up client states from Cuba to Vietnam, armed regimes in Africa, and maintained vast garrisons across Eastern Europe. The burden was unbearable. The Soviet Union was bleeding resources to maintain prestige. Stage 2. Economic stagnation. By the 1970s, the Soviet economy had stopped growing. Central planning crushed innovation. Factories produced low-quality goods no one wanted. Farms failed repeatedly. A country with some of the richest soil on Earth had to import grain from the West. Oil revenues kept the illusion alive, but when prices dropped in the 1980s, the mask fell. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble was never convertible. Even Soviet citizens preferred US dollars or gold. The government bought foreign goods with its dwindling reserves. When oil prices collapsed, Moscow ran out of hard currency. The empire's economy had no pulse. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Within 2 years, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany were gone. The Soviet satellites that provided security and influence vanished. The USSR no longer had the resources to control them. Stage 5. Complete collapse. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. No war, no invasion, just implosion. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons died of internals of failure. The entire sequence, from stability to collapse, took less than 1,000 days. The pattern had repeated perfectly. The United States. Stage 5. Today, the United States is the most powerful empire in human history. Its military spans the globe. Its currency anchors the global economy. Its culture shapes the world. And yet, every indicator says it is deep inside the same pattern that ended every empire before it. Stage 1. Military overextension. The United States maintains more than 750 bases in 80 countries. Troops operate in 150 nations. America defends Europe through NATO, Asia through Japan and South Korea, the Middle East through endless interventions, and now faces strategic rivals in both Russia and China. The annual defense budget exceeds $850 billion, more than the next 10 nations combined. And still isn't enough. Recruitment is falling, equipment is aging, the empire's reach has exceeded its grasp. Stage 2. Currency debasement. In 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, turning the world's reserve currency into pure fiat money. Since 2000, the US money supply has grown by 400%. Since 2020, more than $6 trillion have been printed. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. It still functions, but only because of faith. And faith, once lost, never returns easily. Stage 3. Debt spiral. The national debt now exceeds $36 trillion, roughly 120% of GDP. Interest payments alone approach $1 trillion per year, more than the entire defense budget. The government borrows to pay interest on previous borrowing. Deficits persist even in peacetime prosperity. This is the definition of a spiral. Motion that cannot be sustained, only delayed. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. America's factories are silent. Over the past 4 decades, manufacturing has migrated to China, Mexico, and Southeast Asia. The United States imports $800 billion more than it exports each year. It relies on foreign suppliers for everything from pharmaceuticals to semiconductors. Even critical military components are made abroad. Like Spain in the 1600s, America consumes wealth rather than creates it. When the flow of dollars reverses, the illusion of abundance will vanish. Stage 5. Social decay. Every measure of social cohesion is collapsing. Trust in government and media is at historic lows. Crime and homelessness rise even in prosperous cities. Drug overdoses kill more Americans each year than the Vietnam War did in a decade. Fertility rates are plunging. Infrastructure crumbles. Politics has become a blood sport where nothing gets fixed. The signs of decay are everywhere, but society distracts itself with entertainment and denial. This is not stability. It is the calm before implosion. Only 2 stages remain. Stage 6. Loss of reserve currency status. This is the turning point every empire dreads. When the world no longer needs your currency, your wealth returns home and becomes inflation. The early signs are already visible. BRICS nations are developing alternatives to the dollar. China and Russia trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia accepts yuan for oil. Central banks are hoarding gold. Each move is small, but together they form a signal. The world is preparing for a post-dollar age. When that shift becomes irreversible, the United States will lose its greatest privilege: the ability to print prosperity. Stage 7. Collapse. When reserve currency demand vanishes, the chain reaction begins. The dollar plunges. Interest rates skyrocket. Debt becomes unpayable. The government cuts essential services, the military contracts, and social order fractures. The collapse won't be slow. It will be sudden, like the USSR's in 1991 or Britain's Imperial retreat after 1945. In the final phase, the empire's institutions still exist, but they no longer command obedience or respect. The superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The illusion of exceptionalism. Every empire tells itself the same comforting story, that it's different. Spain believed divine favor would protect it. Britain believed its democracy and navy made it immortal. The Soviet Union believed ideology would outlast economics. And America believes that technology, innovation, and democracy will exempt it from arithmetic. But history doesn't honor exceptions. The same sequence that destroyed empires across centuries is unfolding again, right now, in real time. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot sustain global dominance without productive capacity. You cannot debase your currency without consequences. You cannot complete 5 stages of collapse and expect to stop before the 7th. Maybe America will reform. Maybe it will rebuild its industry, balance its books, and renew its unity. Maybe it will prove history wrong. But history has never been wrong before. The math is the same, the behavior identical, and the outcome, if nothing changes, inevitable. The warning written in the past. Since 2020, America has accelerated every stage. It has printed unprecedented sums of money, expanded debt faster than ever, extended military commitments, hollowed out production, and fractured its own society. The empire isn't approaching the pattern. It is deep inside it. The last 2 stages are forming on the horizon. If this analysis opened your eyes to where we truly are in history, remember this: the answers are not hidden in the future. They are written in the past. Every empire that ignored the warning signs paid the same price. Spain's gold couldn't save it. Britain's navy couldn't save it. The Soviet Union's nukes couldn't save it. Power without discipline always collapses. The United States still has time, but not much. Whether that time is a decade or a few short years depends on choices made now. Because once Stage 6 begins, once confidence in the dollar cracks, there is no recovery. Only recognition that the end has already started. 3 empires have completed the sequence. The 4th is in progress. History is repeating itself. And this time, the script is being written in real time. Subscribe, because when stages 6 and 7 arrive, you'll want to understand not just what happened, but why. The future isn't where the truth hides. The truth has been there all along, written in the ashes of every empire that thought it was too great to fall.